All right, folks, it's time for World Politics. We'll see if anybody else joins us for this conversation and all along those lines. But let's see what's happening in the political landscape, and maybe it'll be an abbreviated show, or maybe folks will be joining us and all along those lines. But House Republicans are to introduce a bill to leaven the president's tariff power as Trump trade war rattles on. So we're hearing that could be something in the news as well. And Trump digs in on tariffs amid market volatility. And that is definitely something that folks are talking about. And apparently Trump signed an executive order aimed at boosting the coal industry. So there is an attempt to try to boost the coal industry, and we'll see how that goes and all along those lines. So definitely the president flanked by coal miners at White House event where he signs a number of executive orders to boost coal production. So he's hoping to boost coal production, and he signed 4 executive orders on coal. The first directs all departments and agencies to end all discriminatory policies against the coal industry, including by ending the leasing moratorium on coal on federal land and accelerated all permitted funding for coal projects. So definitely looks like coal is definitely going to be a major thing that will be going on. The second imposes a moratorium on the unscientific and unrealistic policies enacted by the Biden administration to protect coal power plants currently operating. And the third promotes grid security and reliability by ensuring that grid policies are focused on secure and effective energy production as opposed to woke policies that discriminate against secure sources of power like coal and other fossil fuels. And the fourth instructs the Justice Department to vigorously pursue and investigate the unconstitutional policies of radically leftist states that discriminate against coal. So it looks like he is definitely going all in on the coal industry and all along those lines. Definitely, it looks like Wall Street closed today on another day of falling stocks after U.S. markets opened at higher levels this morning. The S&P fell 1.6%, wiping out an earlier gain of 4.1%. Meanwhile, the Dow Jones lost 0.84%, and the Nasdaq Composite dropped 2.1%. So it looks like in this coal initiative, Donald Trump was joined on stage by a West Virginia coal miner named Jeff Crow and Tony Campbell of the East Kentucky Power Cooperative. Both applauded Trump for lowering regulations on coal. So that looks like that's something that is a major thing that he's trying to do, is get the coal industry on his side and all along those lines. So that's something that we're here in terms of a major new political story and all along those lines. So definitely it looks like coal is getting some support, and that is something that I'm sure the coal industry might be interested in. And I think that folks coming in from West Virginia might be interested in it as well. So I see Jacoby joined me. So I just saw that he's come and got some support of the coal industry. So apparently he's lowering regulations on coal and all along those lines. So I guess he's trying to make those folks in West Virginia and coal country happy and everything like that. So I don't know what your take is on this, but apparently he had some guy that was there was a coal miner as well as somebody from a coal company and everything like that. So it looks like he's trying to make the coal folks happy.
What, are you talking about Trump finally getting a person from a deep red state when the coal industry is trying to back him, like the labor union and everything else? So he's going to grab the one dude who's in that MAGA crowd that'll never criticize him to go out and say something happy about him? Are you talking about that kind of guy?
Yeah, that kind of guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's doing his usual tricks. He's out there making people happy with the coal and everything like that. And he's just having his moment. So he's just saying, hey, look, I'm just going to grab friends that can help me.
Yeah, I mean, it at this moment right now, because the stock market is tanking, it dropped another 300 some points today. It had a huge swing. It started out high and then just dropped off a cliff. It's, again, this tariff stuff is just bad news for them. Stuff is about to get jacked up, starting tomorrow. Prices are going to go outrageous because you're throwing 110% tariff now on China. So you know what? Everything at Walmart, everything at Target, everything at every grocery store is about to go up. So yeah, he's trying to find something that he can put out there in front of people and say, hey, everybody loves Trump.
They just love that Trump guy. That's what he tried to say. Everybody loves him and everything like that. Well, there was that infighting. Apparently, they struck a deal to end their feud, Johnson and Luna. So they struck a deal to end their feud over remote voting for new parents. The Democrats are still pushing the point, but it looks like they came up with some sort of compromise agreement. So I guess they couldn't stay feuding too long. So I guess they're still friends or something like that.
Again, the Republican Party over the past two administrations, one of them was Trump, was the when they were running the Congress, they were the least effective in terms of passing legislation. And then on top of that, the legislation that they did pass was useless legislation. This right here is another instance of them coming to a compromise to do what? Make the Republican Party fall in line so Trump will be happy so they can stay in power. It's all politics. Everything that they're doing is, Rick, you brought it up before where the 4 soldiers that died in Lithuania and Trump couldn't go and do pay his respect like every other president would do.
Yeah, they call it dignified transfer. You show up at the plane, you watch as the coffins are unloaded with American flags covering them. You meet with the families, and you honor the sacrifice of the dead guys. And
and what was wild is that weekend, Trump wanted to play golf with the Saudis. He playing a live tournament. And there was not a press release or a post from the post that the Twitter post or whatever from the White House was about him playing golf and how well Trump did at playing golf. Nothing about the 4 dead soldiers.
And the media didn't cover it very much, if at all. There's some learned hopelessness in the media that they don't think it's going to make a difference. It won't change any mind, so they shut up about it.
Well, I don't know if it's the learned hopelessness more so than they're going to be sued if they say anything that Trump doesn't like, because that's what he did with ABC. That's why he has that CBS with 60 Minutes. That's why that's a $2 billion lawsuit that he has out there. He's got the other lawsuits that he's settled with.
The lawsuits themselves are garbage. But the news media, the news sources that get sued, back down because they don't want further harassment from the government.
Yep. And now, did you see the article or the? I cannot remember the congressman's name. He wanted to get into a fight with one of the Teamsters. I forget his name, but he now has already put out that they should be able to shoot reporters that put out quote unquote fake news.
Oh wow. They're just going totally mad and everything. Hey, Rick, just really quickly, I saw, and I don't know how much you get for trying to assassinate a judge, but apparently a California man pleaded guilty today to attempting to assassinate Justice Brett Kavanaugh 2 months before he was set to go on trial for the 2022 murder plot. So it's a young fella, Nicholas Roski, 29. So that would make him 26 at the time that he was attempting this, and so he entered a guilty plea for the single charge.
All right, but this is just crazy people. It's the people who try to assassinate political figures in the United States. They're not freedom fighters. They're all lunatics. We do not have a tradition of sane people trying to take out, like Hitler. There are at least 42 documented assassination attempts on Hitler. I figure that a lot of those people were sane and trying to take out a leader who was destroying their country. But that's not the tradition in the U.S.
Well, just to show you how insane this gentleman was, the article says Roski, armed with a handgun, knife, and zip ties, flew across the country and took a taxi to Kavanaugh's Maryland home late at night in June of 2022. He turned around when he saw Kavanaugh's security detail, court document said. Then he spoke to his sister over the phone, and she convinced him to call 911 instead of carrying out the attack.
Yeah, so, that's just a crazy person. The guy who shot Hinckley, who shot Reagan, crazy person trying to get a date with Jodie Foster. That was his rationale, that if he shot, and so assassinations are, I don't know, they're just news about crazy people.
But how much? But it brings up a question of mental health and everything. Because even this article says that he said, Roski, that he's been suicidal for a long time, and it's what he told the authorities after his arrest. The transcript of the interview shows, and I saw that the leaked draft. It made me upset, and then it made me want to. I don't know. I was under the illusion that I could make the world a better place by killing him. So apparently, he definitely had some psychiatric issues and everything like that. So are we doing enough to deal with our people that are having mental illness?
Probably not, but we're 1/3 of a billion people in this country. You're going to have crazy people, and we've got almost 500 million guns in the country. Crazy people are going to act out. Here, I want to talk about something that's new and crazy from the world of entertainment. Mm-hmm. So when I was writing for Kimmel, which is now more than 10 years ago, we got residual checks when the show rebroadcast, on network TV, and it was a healthy chunk of change, a few $100 per rebroadcast. Mm-hmm. And over the course of the almost 12 years I worked there, that the residuals added up to a lot. Lately, my wife and I have been getting these fat envelopes, an inch thick, with hundreds of residual checks for streaming broadcasts. So some streamer, like a Hulu or a Tubi or some, is rebroadcasting Kimmel shows, and all the checks range from 2 cents to 5 cents a piece. My wife took a stack of them to the bank, and she got $7. And it's crazy, and it's ridiculous because she'll sign that. My wife's nice to me. She signs hundreds of checks for me, forges my name, and takes them to the bank, and some poor teller has to put them through some machine and it's all the postage to send this brick of checks costs more than I'm getting in the checks themselves.
Well, I don't know if you heard this, but I know Jatopia is where.
Let me get to my point.
Okay.
So it's ridiculous, but I'm okay because I made my money back years ago, and so I'm okay with getting 2 cents and stuff. And I'm not. If we get 1,000 checks, it'll be enough to go out to dinner. But what makes me worried is that everybody is getting checks like this. That
they might not be getting checks like that in North Carolina.
Hold on. That if every actor, every writer, everybody who belongs to a union is now getting checks for rebroadcast for 3 cents and 8 cents, that's not enough to do anything with. And people are that's why there are writers who have a network, have a job writing for TV, who are living in their cars.
Yep. There's definitely the case and everything like that. Hey, Jacoby, we had that federal post office worker that apparently lost a lot of things. There was a lot of mail that just flew out on the streets and the highways here in the area and everything. And I was talking to a friend of mine. They were speculating, wondering if any of that, because it is around the corner from tax day, was tax returns or things that they were needed to get that tax money. Because what I saw, those envelopes are destroyed. So they're not getting that check and everything. They might have to get them recut or something like that. But what was your take when you saw that? Because I think it was a mishap or something that the plane flew out and all of that mail went flying through North Carolina.
Yeah, it happened on two roads. I mean, it's going to be around tax time, anytime the mail goes like that. Yeah, it was a mishap. mean, that was a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely was a bad thing. This is for both of you, and I'm just wondering because I still see an interesting article. Rick, you're going to love this one because both of you are into fantasy and science fiction and things like that. But apparently, we might be getting back, and I'm going to tell you why we might be getting back the opportunity to have Tyrannosaurus Rex and a number of other things that used to be here back in existence, because there was an article today that came out according to a Dallas-based biotech company, Colossal Biosciences, that a species of wolf that died out 12,500 years ago lives again as the world's first successfully de-extincted animal. So I'm thinking that since they've created these 3 dire wolf pups by using ancient DNA cloning and gene editing technology to alter the genes of a gray wolf.
Okay, so I read the whole. I read these animals exist. There's video and photos, and they have them when they were pups, when they're adorable. Now they're huge. They're they're I don't know, like 5-6 feet long. They stand 3 feet at the shoulder. They're giant wolves. That the last time they walked on Earth was more than 10,000 years ago. This same company is trying to bring back woolly mammoths, and they have made woolly mice. These are mice with woolly mammoth fur, and they're working on a ton of this stuff. And it's not exactly like Jurassic Park, where they find the genes, they find the chromosomes, the old DNA, and then they patch in the bits of chromosome, the bits of the genes that make the difference between like modern wolves and these ancient extinct wolves. It's kind of like, taking, well, they used to have kit cars. You pull the body off a car and you get a plastic replica of a 1932 Ford, and you put it on, a Volkswagen body, and it looks like you're driving a 1932 Ford. It's not exactly that, but so they're patching together. They're taking wolf genes and added, like they made like 80 gene edits to turn a regular wolf embryo into a dire wolf, which is a wolf out of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like the wolf from Game of Thrones, exactly. And everything.
It's fascinating and scary at the same time, because it has been the science for a while, but we're approaching Logan's Run.
Mm-hmm. Well, the deal is like tiger parents could like recreate LeBron. They could, you could, like, I always thought that Elvis should, like, it's too late, but that he should have sold his sperm. So many people of my generation loved Elvis, that people would have loved if you could bring Elvis back. And you could, I'm sure that in the next 10, 20 years, tiger parents will custom edit their kids' genes to be taller, faster. They'll figure out, have quicker reflexes, better peripheral vision. They'll create sports monsters, and then sports will have to decide whether this is even legal.
Yeah, and I think there were a couple of movies that were based on that and everything. I did have a question for both of you, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, a coworker, and we were talking about it. One of my coworkers from the testing company and everything like that. But I know, Rick, you brought it up before, and I think you have it as well, Jacoby, this idea that as we age and everything, putting your mind in a younger body. But then I asked the question, how would that work? Because I'm thinking if your mind is in the younger body, wouldn't your mind have the trauma of your existence that you had? So the example I gave was, would Elizabeth Taylor want to really have the 7 or 8 traumatic divorces that she had in her 50-year-old body? And if she ran across Richard Burton, would she be ready to like kick his ass and everything like that? So
trauma heals over. If people had a chance to come back, 50, 60 years younger in a new body, they would do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. If they create that, if that becomes a reality, then the body becomes no more than just another vessel of transportation. It becomes like a car or a truck. And so you get to choose whatever car you want to be. Your conscious moves from whatever body to whatever body. That's altered carbon.
Yeah, it was a terrible show, a fucking terrible show. Hold on, but there used to be a pretty big taboo against wanting to live forever. Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Now you have tech bros doing all this stuff like getting transfusion of teenagers' blood, thinking that it'll help. There's, does it help make somebody peppier for like a week or two? I don't know. It seems like half quackery, like half maybe it does something, but it's creepy because you're paying teenagers to donate blood so you can switch out your old guy blood. Now, it used to be there's cryonic suspension. That's where you get your dead body gets cooled down to like minus 300 degrees to be preserved to a point where science can fix whatever was wrong with you, plus the damage done by lowering your body temperature. And it used to be the only celebrity who said he wanted to do that was Simon Cowell. And Simon Cowell like takes pride in everybody thinking he's an asshole. So he was okay with, I'm going to say whatever I want. Other celebrities, nobody admits it.
That's why they're studying the water bear.
Yeah, studying the water bear, studying everything else as well. I've never quite understood, and I think the pyramids prove it and everything. The purpose behind pyramids and mausoleums and everything like that, because I know that generally speaking, when folks pass and all along those lines, the earth and the worms and everything else makes the body deteriorate and all along those lines. So I'm assuming that it's less of a deterioration if you're in a mausoleum, but I'm thinking your body's still deteriorating at some point.
I mean, Ben Franklin talked about wanting if he could be preserved in a barrel of wine but nobody had the means to do it. We're right on the verge. I toured a place that is working on this, on lowering the temperature and then bringing the temperature back up to see if people can be preserved. And they can already do it for some stuff, like corneas. They can do it for two-dimensional stuff. A cornea is thin. You start running into problems when you have three-dimensional stuff because you have to cool it down at the same rate. Otherwise, it fractures. And this company, 21st Century Medicine in Fontana, just a few years ago had worked up to the point where they could freeze a rabbit kidney, which is not very big, take it down to minus 200, 300 degrees, and then bring it back up, put it in a rabbit, and it would work. So, if they could get the technology from the size of a rabbit kidney to the size of a brain, then we're looking at being not too far away from that technology.
Well, that's what they're studying. I mean, seriously though, that's what they're studying a lot of the tardigrade or the water bear because of its ability to basically be indestructible and doesn't really die. Because it can be frozen essentially and come back to life.
The water bear is this microscopic thing. It looks under the microscope. It looks like a kind of like a bear. It's got like 4 little legs and it can swim along. It doesn't have a brain. It's like, but that thing survives everything. You can shoot it into space. It gets radiated into space, the vacuum of space, the cold of space, and then you bring it back down and that you put it back in water and it goes back to being this little thing. Yeah, it survives everything.
Yep.
Hey, speaking of Rick,
and it's wild if you look at its DNA structure, because I was watching a thing about it, and if you look at its DNA structure, that's what the cool piece of what is making it so indestructible is the way its DNA is based, or the way its DNA is set up. It's just wild. It's a neat little thing to look into. But also
that hey, Rick,
cryo. I was just going to say the deep freeze and everything is what they're looking for interstellar space travel, which, again, we'll never be able to do interstellar space travel because the distance, it's just impossible.
It sounds totally impossible. Hey, Rick, just really quickly, I asked this on a previous show. I think it was last year and everything. What the heck are we doing to those animals in California? Because apparently there's some very pissed off sea lions there in California because they're saying that along some 70 miles of Southern California coastline, usually curious and playful sea lions are attacking humans in the water. So
because
maybe they're being poisoned, but they seem
algal, it's bad algae, I believe. This stuff they ingest the algae, and it messes up their brains, and it makes them aggressive. It's some kind of bloom of some kind of contagion that gives, like animals with rabies get really angry and they bite people. And it's a similar kind of brain mess up. But yeah.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we're roofing the animals, and that's why they're pissed. So if I can use the club example and everything, so we're doing just like people do with women and putting roofies in there.
No, I mean you roofie somebody and they go to sleep. But no, these animals get to have something that it makes them pissed off.
Yeah, I would say more so we're polluting the ocean so bad it's creating the bad algae, because the algae is the one that has to clean up the ocean, and that's what they're eating is the bad algae, and that makes it bad so crazy.
You're zombifying them. They're like the people in The Last of Us or any freaking zombie movie ever. That something takes over their brain and turns them into attack machines. Though if you get to the sea lions fast enough, but it's hard because they're huge animals. You have to haul them out of the water. You have to take them to some marine medicine facility, and then you have to, nurse them until they're better. And it's tough.
I know we talked about this before, but there's another case of it, and this is a slightly political story, but it's more travel. Are either one of you trying to get on a plane? Because apparently yesterday another business jet went down and everything, and 5 were injured as it crashed into the waters at the end of the runway, and this was in Oregon. So I just wondered, every time I turn around, there's more and more of these.
Yeah, my wife and I are flying, in the near future because our kid is getting married in Great Britain. So yeah, it's a little worrisome. I mean, my wife is asking me to shut down my Twitter account, just temporarily suspend it in case the government starts scrutinizing social media accounts and we get stopped trying to re-enter the United States. So far we haven't deported any citizens, but we've deported a lot of people who have a legal right, not a lot, but some people who have a legal right to be in the United States, adjudicated by courts. We've sent them to these never get out prisons in El Salvador. There's 2 pretty well-known ones. One is this guy, this dad that got all the courts agree that he shouldn't have been sent down there. Another is this gay makeup artist who was rounded up, and they said he was part of MS-13 because he had tattoos, but his tattoos say mom and dad. And
there are a bunch of athletes, including the one from Duke, and others that might be getting deported as well if they're not already being rounded up because of the different countries that are being on the list and everything like that.
The worst part about it, he's doing it. They're using an ancient law. We're not at war. They're sending people outside of the country to a place without due process. It's just everything about it is bad. And it's just rounded up brown people. That's what they're doing.
The provision, there's a provision in, I don't know, there's a law that says you can suspend some of these due process rules in times of war. So Trump is saying this is war against, these immigrants, and in order to justify what he's doing. And the courts are saying pretty much no. Let's talk about, though, Amy Coney Barrett for a second. Mm-hmm. Amy Coney Barrett was appointed by Trump to help overturn Roe v. Wade, which she did. But MAGAs are all pissed off at Amy Coney Barrett because she's one of those nice surprises that occasionally you'll appoint a Supreme Court justice for political. I mean, they're always appointed, for their politics,
Right.
but sometimes they defy their supposed politics, and they rule on the merits, and they rule based on common sense and precedent. And Amy Coney Barrett has been doing that quite a bit, where, yeah, she sucks on abortion, but on a lot of other stuff, she is like a reasonable jurist. Like she's a fair judge of, what should be done. Even Kavanaugh, who, got kind of rapey in high school and maybe in college, and kind of lied about some stuff during his congressional testimony. Even Kavanaugh sometimes will rule, like a good jurist. Like these people take their job seriously, and they're not just puppets of whoever appointed them. And really, out of the 9 justices, you only have 2 corrupt, insane guys who will consistently go against, precedent and common sense and decency. And that's Clarence Thomas and Alito. And those
questions for both of you.
The problem with that, real quick though, Mark. The problem with that, that means you only need 3 justices to side with the 2 crazy people.
That's right.
And those 3 end up being the same 3, which turned out to be Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Roberts on occasion, and the other Gorsuch. So I'm not a fan of Amy Coney Barrett or Kavanaugh or Gorsuch. They tend to rule on conservative things very conservatively. And then also they're also on that same crew that gave Trump immunity as president. They're the same crew that just said that he can fire those individuals in the federal government. He also can start deporting people back to El Salvador. However, they did say that he has to give them due process.
Right.
But how is the court going to enforce him to do that when they're already saying that, one, he has immunity, and the court has no way of actually enforcing any actual regulation or any law, because they have no body to control. Because the individuals that would go after somebody who broke the court's ruling is controlled by the executive branch, the same group that's going to break the ruling.
Yeah, well, apparently, and by the way, I think I figured out where one of our cohorts is going to be at and everything like that. So they did say that the meeting today, that Trump is scheduled to speak at it, is the National Republican Congressional Committee dinner. So I'm guessing that that's where David Walker is going to be at, since he did say he would be attending an event with the president in this today. So I'm guessing that's the event that he's going to be attending and everything like that. So if you could get in David's ear and give him some advice to give to Trump, what would it be and everything? So if you
he knows better than we do. He's the freaking expert. But I don't know that you can get in Trump's ear.
Nope, you can't get in Trump's ear.
Have we talked about today's stock market before I joined you? How it was recovering nicely, and then Trump doubled the tariff against China, and it dropped.
So yeah, we started talking about that a little bit. Yeah, I mean it is a dumb thing that Trump is doing. It's a self-inflicted thing. If I am counting my numbers correctly, I think we have dropped over the past 4 days of the stock market. We have dropped the stock market by 7,000 points now.
It was at almost 45,000. Now it's at what? 38,000, 37 something?
I think it's at 37.
Okay. So
just really quick, because apparently this is something that our secretary is back in, and this comes down to Trump as well and everything, because apparently she waffled Tuesday when asked about his threat to deport U.S. citizens to foreign prisons. So apparently Levitt was asked to explain Trump's disturbingly enthusiastic response to Salvadorian President Nayib Bukele's wildly illegal proposition for the U.S. government to relocate individuals incarcerated in the federal prison system, including the American system citizens, to the Central American country. So I guess they want our prisoners in their country. So they asked her, and apparently she kind of wavered because the short answer that she gave is can, so none, in terms of removing some citizens from here to there, but she didn't say that. So she said the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He also discussed it privately, making sure to say that Trump had only discussed potentially deporting U.S. citizens. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly. These are violent, repeat offenders in American streets. So the president said if it's legal, if there's a legal path to do it, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly in an effort of transparency. So if you committed a crime and you were violent in the U.S., maybe you're sitting in one of the North Carolina, California prisons, you can think that you might go to an El Salvadorian prison that you've never been to. That can be even rougher. And everything. So our thoughts around this idea of shipping prisoners to a whole other country.
I'm sure it's against a ton of laws, but Trump defies laws. If he thinks there'd be some publicity value in shipping some American citizens out, he might try, but it's another horrible, dumb move.
Yeah, it's another show. If you notice, they're calling the people that they're sending to El Salvador terrorists. They're not terrorists. There may be some in there, but they're not terrorists. They're criminals in there. But it's the same thing with the idea around shipping American citizens there. El Salvador is going to say, yeah, we'll take them. Why? Because Trump has a deal where he's paying El Salvador money. I don't know who's running that prison, and I don't know what kickbacks Trump may get, but I think there's something that's tied. Something is a little fishy with why he chose that prison and whoever owns it. But yes, it is completely illegal to do so, but he'll try and do it because it's another show, and he'll call every person this super extreme, violent, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But those same super extreme, violent individuals, it could have been a situation where a wife who is being abused by her husband shoots the husband and is now in jail for a violent murder. You know what? She's now going to end up in El Salvador because, hey, we got to keep the show going.
It's all about the show.
Let's go back to the tariffs. The tariffs against China that I think kick in tonight at midnight are 104%, doubling the price of anything you get from China. Now, I buy some stuff from China because it's cheap. I bought my wife a piece of jewelry from China on Temu. It was $3 free shipping. And I'll buy little cheap crap like that because it's almost nothing. So like people do buy, and people buy fast fashion from China, like freaking clubwear that you wear 3 times before it falls apart for $8. And what I don't know. I assume all that is going away, or I don't know what happened. But wait. One more thing is China had a 7.5% tariff on the stuff we send them. The Trump people miscalculated and said it was 34%. So they hit China with 34%. China said, we don't have that. And so they jacked up their rates to 34%. Then we jacked up ours to 54%. Then China didn't kiss our asses. And now we're doubling it again to 104%.
Well, Rick, let's take it to where the reality is, because you had said that you bought stuff off Temu and stuff like that. For people that listen, they may just say, hey, I'm not going to buy anything from Temu and I'm good. People have to realize every cell phone has a part from China. Every single cell phone that you buy has something that was made in that whole market, from China, Taiwan, to even in Japan. It's not made at one spot. Every video game console has something that was made in China. And it does. And so what we're looking at, I mean, every car, you can look at the chips come out of Taiwan that are coming out of the cars. That's why there was such a problem during the actual, during COVID, because the supply chain went down and we couldn't get chips out of out of Taiwan. That's where the majority of the chips are coming from. But again, all these tariffs and everything else that are hitting China is going to drive every single thing that people purchase, people use up.
Well, I got a question for you guys. So when there are fees on stuff, that leads to smuggling. People will try to smuggle cigarettes in from Canada because you don't have to pay the cigarette taxes. So won't all these tariffs on like Chinese chips and Taiwanese chips and parts, won't, like, Trump is so worried about fentanyl being smuggled across our northern southern borders, won't we start seeing a bunch of smuggling of goods and parts to avoid the tariffs?
I would think so.
Well,
It's going to be extremely expensive if we have to make the local, the United States iPhone. Because I saw somebody put out an article that said it would be double the prices, or it would be ridiculous the prices.
So I guess like a new
iPhone. Rick, to add into the smuggling that you're talking about, which will take place, people are going to try and pull fabricated things and sell fabricated things at cheaper prices. Yeah, and it's all busted. But the problem is that what's really going to happen, because the prices are going to go up, people are going to lose jobs, people are going to be struggling for money. What is one of the things that is tied to a very impoverished area? Crime. So crime rates are going to go up because you're going to have theft that's going to go up. All this stuff is all tied together. But again, they don't care. They really don't. They want the show.
So
it's all about the show. Speaking of the show,
right now, I think the newest best iPhone is like $1,300 retail, and it's going to go to $2,500. So people will be smuggling iPhones across the border from Canada, right?
So you're gonna have with the iPhones and stuff, you're gonna have more theft on the iPhones, because that's actually one of the bigger phones that's stolen. Same thing with Samsung, all the other ones. But again, all this stuff is gonna go way up. You're gonna have a lot of theft that's gonna happen. People smuggling is theft. I mean, they gotta get the product from somewhere. So the product is gonna come in. Somebody's gonna steal whatever they need out of it. Yeah, things are going to get really interesting as prices continue to rise.
Yeah,
so when will this have political implications? When will Republicans jumping ship?
Republicans aren't going to jump ship until next year. That's it. They're just going to go along because they don't have to worry about any elections until next year. Next year is when you'll see the Republican Party shift. Hey, maybe we shouldn't. Oh, I don't know if I want to. Oh, look, I'm doing something against Trump. That's when that'll happen. Right now, they don't have to say anything because it's just Trump. That's all it is.
Just Trump being Trump and everything like that. And apparently we've got a brother that wants to run to be governor of Michigan. So he's out there. I think he's one of Trump's friends. So he said he wants to make Michigan great again and all along those lines. So I don't know if you saw this article, but apparently this gentleman that is running, and he put his name in the hat, is Republican Congressman John James. And he's announced his bid for Michigan governor. And he said that he is it's one of the most pivotal elections on the ballot in 2026. And it's definitely one of the ones that's getting big name politicians. So he says it's time to get Michigan's government out of fantasy land and back to common sense. Our state has suffered long enough. Michigan is strong. Our people are strong, but we are being held back by a lack of strong, competent leadership. And Gretchen Whitmer, by the way, can't run because she's served her maximum amount of terms that she can have. So there are a number of people that are jumping in the race, including this gentleman. Apparently right now his top opponent is State Senator Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, but others could run too, like former State Attorney General Mike Cox and 2022 gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon, who are both exploring bids and everything. And two statewide Democratic office holders are also running in what's expected to be a high-profile primary on that side of the aisle as well. Both Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson have announced gubernatorial bids, and there's a sheriff, Chris Swanson, that is also running as well. So it could be some interesting politics in Michigan. So we'll see how Michigan plays out and everything like that. But I think that this particular gentleman is definitely a friend and a supporter of Trump. So he's got some people lined up in his camp that are trying to win some of these interesting races. And by the way, there's an interesting wrinkle in the Detroit case because the Detroit mayor, Mike Dugan, who is running, is an independent and not in the Democratic Party, the party he previously affiliated with. So there might be a third candidate where we running and possibly could win.
I don't know. Sorry, I was looking at a different story.
No
Christy Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, posed for a photo op in full, SWAT team garb today, holding a semi-auto weapon, holding it wrong, and holding it with a chambered round. You know what muzzle discipline is, right? Never point a gun at, loaded, unloaded, anywhere near the vicinity of somebody else.
But what was the Republican? What was the Republican that got in trouble for doing that? It wasn't Dan Quayle. It was somebody that shot somebody.
No, it was Cheney. Dick Cheney shot a guy in the face with a shotgun, which is better than like an automatic shotgun. You get a hit with a bunch of pellets, and they pick the pellets out of your face, and you don't die. Christy Noem has the barrel of a gun 2 feet away from the head of one of these highly armed SWAT type, I don't know, immigration guys. And it's a ridiculous picture.
It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like some more crazy publicity that they are doing in that sense. Didn't she also go down to one of the prisons? Because she's been doing a lot of these PR type stunts.
And people said, people can do what they want to do. Like people pointed out that while the stock market is wiping out people's retirement accounts, that Carolyn Levitt, the president's press secretary, was shooting a selfie with her $4,800 Louis Vuitton purse, and some people were saying, that's bad optics. Other people were saying she works hard. She deserves to spend $5,000 on a purse if she wants.
Apparently, in addition to being the youngest White House press secretary, she's got some pretty good money because apparently this came out of one of the Indian newspapers and it was released earlier this year, back in March. But apparently she's got some notable assets. Her appointment not only showed her rapid political ascent, but also brought attention to her personal life, notably her marriage to real estate development Nicholas Riccio, who is 32 years her senior. But there's some estimates as to what her media worth is. As she began her journey as a journalist when she was as a media person when she was a student at St. Asselin College. Never heard of this particular college.
Right. Okay, so the deal, like she's got lots of stuff that that's interesting about her, none of which, like you can make fun of her for it. At the same time, like people have a right to do what they're going to do. She's 27. She's married to a guy who's 59. Yeah, he's a real estate guy with a net worth of $6 million. So they're a little bit rich. I've read something that she's not even taking a salary to work for Trump. I don't know if that's true.
No, they said she makes about $180,000 a year as press secretary, which is reportedly the same as her predecessor. And according to a report in Times of India, her net worth is $6 million, which stems from working and investing in the government. So successful in real estate adds to their pooling the wealth and everything. But apparently her wealth is supposed to be in that $6 million range.
All right. So if she wants to spend $5,000 on a purse or $2,400, I guess, on sale, fine. It's that's her right. And then Christy Noem similarly is wearing, in all these shots where she's in a Salvadoran prison where she's posing with automatic semi-auto rifles. She's wearing a $50,000 Rolex watch. And people are saying, that's kind of jerky, but it's her right. She's got her face. She's obviously had tens of thousands of dollars worth of cosmetic work, all sorts of filler to smooth out any facial lines she might have. Her lips are plumped, and her hair is always like, to the max. And, you can say this is not a serious person, or you can say that people have a right to be the way they want to be.
No, they didn't have the right to be the way they want to be. But I do have a question for you that, because that came up on the sports shows that I was watching, and actually it was with some friends of mine and everything. How much does plastic surgery cost and everything? Because people are thinking that Coach K must have had a lot of plastic surgery because he seems to have a very youthful face, and the same with Jim Nantz, the famous sportscaster who is a Houston Cougar fan. But they both seem to have very youthful faces, even though they're
you get Botox, and it's a few $100, and it lasts for 3 months. But if you want to get, here's a tip for cosmetic surgery. If you live in a big city that has a medical school, go to the medical school to get your procedure. My nose job, I got, I don't know, more than 20 years ago now. It was free because I got it at a med school.
That's across the board, because I know a lot of people, even locally, that go to UNC and Duke for their regular physicals and their dental work and a number of other things like that. Because, like you said, the students have to get some training, so oftentimes it is.
And you get good results. Now it's about 1/3 less for the cosmetic procedures. I was lucky that, the way it worked out for me, I got mine done, I think, at NYU, and but the deal is you get the student, and you also get the professor watching the students. You got 2 people working on you, and they're going to do a good job. It's not like one of these chop shops where they're doing like 8 nose jobs in a day, and they all kind of, you used to, in New York, you used to be able to know the work of this one guy who did this nose scoop out, where everybody's nose kind of looked like a ski jump. And you'd see those people on the street and their noses looked okay, but they didn't look natural. And you're like, there's another one of those noses. But if you go to a med school, you're going to get a conscientious work done, not just somebody who's knocking off his 3,000th nose so, and you'll get a discount.
Discount and everything like that. We're going to wrap this show up and everything. I was actually looking at a funny Instagram, because apparently the woman has written stuff, and I can show it to you, all in the notion of what looks like Arabic. But as the person says, I don't care what she's saying, because they just are looking at the bustiness of the young lady and everything like that. So I don't know if you saw that or anything along those lines, but definitely, hopefully I can pull it back. But yeah, there's a little bit of the image and everything.
There's a famous picture from the 1950s of one movie star looking at another movie star's boobs. It might be Sophia Loren, it might be, I don't know, Jane Mansfield, and I don't know. It's always funny when that's what took down Al Franken as a senator. He posed for a picture where one of his he went on a USO tour, and one of the people who went was one of the women he was with had fallen asleep, and he posed with his hands like this, like he was about to grab her boobs. And that, even he was a comedian then, he wasn't a politician, he was just doing a stupid comedian thing. That photo, 15, 20, 25 years later, eventually caused him to have to resign as senator. So boobs.
You got apparently she was using that as a means to get attention, but she also wrote in Arabic. It looks like whatever her protest was and everything.
Yeah, so when I'm tempted to look at boobs or butts at the gym, I have to remind myself, I don't need to look at that like a creep. I can go home and sit at my computer and look at, in the privacy of my, office, like a creep. Instead of being a public creep, I can be a private creep.
Exactly, and nobody will know. Nobody will know what you're
doing. My wife, who's like, come on.
All right, whatever. It's just my husband. He's doing what he does. But on that note, we're going to get out of here. We got
All
a
right.
World Edition tomorrow
I will
and other
see you
shows here
tomorrow
on the
morning.
network later on. So we'll catch you folks later on, and we'll be back with World Politics on Thursday.